This presentation is many differences between the North and South, whether it was economic, geographic, or even social. This explains very basic differences and even some similarities occasionally. Okay, let's switch the opacity to halfway. Same for
roll an odd number cubed, roll an odd number on a number cubed.
okay,
Roll a number
this.
cubed again and roll
I want it to be.
So it's independent or dependent. 1, 2, 3. They're out.
The geographic differences were such as the North was a trade center, basically, where ships, boats, pretty much anything came in from different countries and was traded to different houses up there. The North was also where many houses were, and that was pretty much where most of the people lived in the United States, while the South was very small in houses, had mostly plantations throughout the land, and a lot of its population was just slaves. The soil in these states was more fertile than the soil in these states. So they were constantly fighting on why slavery should be legal, why can't there be farms and plantations up here, things like that. And it got to the point where eventually the South decided we're going to break off and create our own country. Many political differences were such as the North believing that we should have a strong central government, while the South wanted us to have a state-run government run by the people for the people. Eventually, it became something in between for our modern-day government. And when they weren't fighting about political differences, like what the government should be, they were fighting about whether they were going to break off or not. And the South decided, we don't like your president, he's basically a tyrant, like King George, which we tried to leave. So they decided, we're going to break off, have our own president, and it'll be much better, since we can have slaves, and slaves were basically outlawed in the North because the North believed that every person was a person, not its property, not this is my property, you're not a person, I'm your owner, you're my property, you're going to do what I want. That's basically what the South was doing. The economic differences were very, very different. For example, as seen in the comic behind, the South wasn't able to hold itself without slavery, since they had pretty much their entire population based off of slavery, their economy based off of slavery, everything was slavery. No one did what they were supposed to, like in the North. The North was a very strong economy, able to survive without slavery, even letting slaves come up to the North just to live as free people. And the South, again, decided we need slaves because without them, we're useless, we're nothing. So there was a huge fight about the North's tyrannical because they can go and survive without us, and we need the North to get our supplies, but we need slaves to be able to live.
10C is iron D.
Social and cultural differences was the North wasn't based off of a government and labor manual done by slavery. and there were a lot of abolitionists that lived up there. Many people were deciding, I don't like slaves because it's taking away the freedom of a free man and making him work for you. And many believe that, like our President Lincoln, shown right here. And the South was based off of slavery, obviously, and decided without slavery, we can't live, so we're just going to leave the United States and create the Confederacy. Like Confederate President Jefferson Davis. Meanwhile, both wanted to destroy something. The North wanted to destroy slavery, and the South, a strong government. That way, the South wanted that, so it was state-run, not government-run, no tyranny. And the North wanted that because it was just destroying free men. Black, white, whatever you wanted to call them. Some were indentured, some were regular. Indentured was legal in every state, but permanent slaves from Africa and just born in the United States were considered tyranny in the north part of the United States, while in the south part of the United States decided that tyranny was a government, not what the cultural differences were.